Hello and welcome back to my wee channel, the channel where I take old cars, get a lot of parts for them, spend a lot of money, sell them and make a loss. And this one will be no exception, although I think it might be because I think I'm going to keep this one. But today what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the whole of the front suspension. The tie rod end has got a lot of plate on the inner joint, and it's causing the wheel to, you can't actually feel anything, but it causes the wheel to splay like that and it wears the insides of the tyre, so I'm going to have to replace it. And like all the other nuts and bolts on the suspension, it'll be a nightmare to get off, no doubt, and there'll be a lot of hacking, sawing, hammering, swearing to get it off. So at the end of the day I find it best just to replace the whole lot, including the strut, and I'm going to do the strut top as well. And for those of you out there who know, the right hand strut top is an absolute nightmare to get off, and I'll show you why in a minute. And I've already done the passenger side, and I've replaced everything here, and I can assure you that it was an absolute nightmare to get everything off. So in preparation for today, last thing last night, I thought I'd come out and just jack it up and take the wheel off, but as you can see in this next bit, I encountered a few problems. And who on earth put these wheel nuts on so tight? They've been done at a tyre place with a, you know, with a gun, obviously. They just won't budge. This is, burst my 17mm socket, would you believe it? It's really too tight. You shouldn't really put them on that tight. God. So I've got my Irwin nut getter offers, I don't know what you call these, that guarantee to get any rounded nut off, and a 27mm socket, so we'll see how we get on with that. Oh dear. Whoever put them on, shame on you. They're just way too tight. Good morning everybody. And after my miserable attempt yesterday to get these wheel nuts off, and I think what the problem was that they've been put on dry, there's no copperies, so these have rusted into the hub. So I just couldn't get them off last night with my 3/8 drive bolt extractors. So I bought these bad boys off Amazon last night, and at the same time I got these super duper polarized tinted safety sunglasses. Because I'm bad for not wearing safety glasses for when I'm working in vehicles, and you really should. It's not a great example to set. So I've got this 17mm, and this is a 1/2 inch drive, so it should give me more purchase on the wheel, and these will take about 90% of all bolts off except Audi A2 wheel nuts, but we'll give it a try. So we hammer it on. Oh, falls immediately off. And I want to try and keep it straight, so put this extension bar on just to see what happens. Ah dear. No, that's not going to work either. It's just as I suspected. the edges have rounded off too much. The metal's too soft. So I'm going to have to resort to my last resort now. And the last resort is drilling them out. I've just sharpened all these drill bits, so hopefully I'll probably blunt them all. I'm trying to get these out. But I'll give it a try. So I'll get a small one in first. That's going quite well. Should be about there. Hey. Oh. Flat battery. Slight change of plan. I managed to find this 16mm bolt extractor. It was lost in my toolbox for ages, and it wasn't in my toolbox, it was in my bolt box. So I found that and I managed to hammer it on, and I've got this 1-inch socket which will just fit over the top, and I'll see if this slackens it off. Oh, thank goodness. It turns out that the 17, which is the one to do it, is just rounding off the corners too much because the metal's too soft. But the 17, by hammering it on, it's managed to get a good grip, and I've got the damn thing off, which is great. See what I've drilled through. Now I've got to get this off the bolt now. Got a little trick for that. Seriously tight. Well, that's a 16 which I managed to hammer on, so that's 2 sizes down. I'm kind of on last chance saloon here. I've drilled it out, hammered that on. We'll just see what happens with my extension. Oh dear. Honestly. Oh dear. Finally! Look at that. Oh, that was the only way to get it out, and it's totally corroded onto the hub. That's what was causing it not to come off. So always put copperies on your wheel bolts. It'll come off a lot easier. when you're working in old cars, these are probably the best tools that you can get. And I started off with the 17 down to 16, then down to the 15, and I finally got the nuts off. Now this is all original, and I can guarantee that every one of these nuts and bolts will need heated, hammered, chiselled off. And the inner joint here is one that is slack, but I'm just going to replace all the ball joints, track control arm, button ball joint. This looks as though it's been replaced at some point, the drop link, so I'll replace that as well. I'm going to replace the strut. The spring looks fairly new, so maybe this strut's been off at some time, and the bolts that are difficult to get off are up in there, so with that having been replaced, they might actually not be too bad, but I'm not holding up high hopes for that. I've had to move the A2 off the hard standing because the Discovery needs an MOT, and it needs the front brake caliper slider sorted. Today I'm just going to put the track rod end and the new tie rod on, because the inner tie rod end is worn than the old one. Now I've already done the brake disc because the old one was absolutely goosed, and I put a new one on the other side, and the brakes were pulling way to the left all the time, so I just had to get this one on quickly, and that wasn't too bad a job to do. So quite a simple operation. You just take this nut off here and you turn the steering right round to the left so that this pushes away out to the right. Then you take the boot off and you can get into the inner joint and slacken it off and take it out. But I know that this will be stuck, and I've got a little tip for taking this off. Now I used to get the ball joints off with either this or this ball joint separator, and after watching an episode of Wheeler Dealers, Dead China, I now get them off with this, and it's a lot simpler and easier, and I'll show you how in a minute. Well, countered the first problem. A bit of heat, I think, is required. Honestly, no two of these things are the same. Normally, that ball joint wouldn't separate, and I would have to use the hammer to tap that like that to separate it, but the mere fact of me just turning that has separated the ball joint, because that is now spinning in there, and the only way to stop that happening is get the other jack in. The jack's up as high as it can go, would you believe it? Nothing's ever straightforward. See what happens. And I'll probably tighten it again first, just to get the thread down onto the WD-40. I hope it's not turning in there. It's still turning, honestly. So there's only one thing left to do. the inner steering boot.
Oh dear, it's getting into it. Might have to put it, oh dear. I think the last one I had done, I had to actually get the spanner between the wishbone and the subframe and put it up through that gap. You can see my finger there. So I had to move the steering back in line with that gap to get this joint off. Oh. Of course my shifter doesn't fit through the gap. Bloody hell. There, I managed to get the mole grips in. Oh yeah! Woo. Ouch! Oh. At last. So I want these kind of at the same length, so I'll line them up there and then I'll spin this nut round to where this other nut is, and then when I put the new ball joint on I'll move it up to there, tighten the nut, and hopefully that should be the same length as the old one. I forgot to mention, because you've got to take the boot off, you've got to take this nut off too. So I usually spray it with grey primer, and then you've got a definite line, slide the boot on, and then put the nut back to the line there, and that should be it lined up properly. So as usual, I kind of help myself. I've painted it, made it smarter, protect it a little bit as well, and all that remains is to put it back on. And I'm not going to show you that, I'm not going to bore you with that. We'll just whiz on and I'll show you what it looks like at the end. Well, that's it all on, which is good, and I knew that these nuts and bolts would be hard to get off, and you've got to remember that I've got to remember that everything on here is 20 years old and it all looks original. There's still original Volkswagen Audi stickers on all the suspension components, so they're going to be hard to get off, and sometimes I forget that, but it's still quite a job, and there's no way, I would ever want to do this full time. So now that it's on, I'm going to tighten up the nut onto the track control arm, and then I'm going to do my little ball and string alignment method. And I've done this in a video before, but it's a very simple method and I can get it almost spot on with that. Right, what I'm going to do now is reverse it down the drive it back down the drive, just let the steering go, let it come to a natural halt. Then I'll get out and I'll use my ball and string method to check the wheel alignment, and if it needs adjusted I will, and I'll adjust it basically to 0, and then I'll check see where the position of the steering wheel is, and if the steering wheel's slightly off, I'll make the adjustment on both track control arms to get the steering wheel straight. It actually feels way off, and I'll show you where the steering wheel is. So I've obviously not put the track control arm on at the same measurement as I took it off. But I'll align the wheels and then I'll get back to realigning the steering wheel afterwards. That's way off. That's about 10mm towing in. So as I suspected, that's 10mm off too. Well, the best laid plans of mice and men. Well, I thought I could hammer the ball joint out with a hammer, but it came out, and I thought I could measure the new track rod end against the old one so that I get the tracking exactly right. No, I'm going to have to adjust it, and it's not just a little bit out, it's 10mm out on each side. So what I'm going to do is slacken the nut off here, get it the right way round. The suspension's got to go like that, so this has got to be screwed in, but I don't screw in the ball joint here, I screw in the actual track control arm. So that's a 30mm spanner. So I've got to take it in quite a bit because I'm quite a way out, which is a bit embarrassing. And hopefully this will bring the steering in fairly straight, but I can adjust the steering afterwards so long as the tracking's level, which is the main thing. So obviously it won't be 20mm here, it'll only be something like 10mm because of the distance. This is away from the centre of the car. Don't know how to explain that. So I've spun that quite a bit. So because it's easy to do, I'm just going to tighten this thing out. There we go. Then I'll get the wheel back on and check the tracking again. Well, that's still towed in quite a bit actually, so I'll have to adjust it out a bit more. So after toing and throwing 2 or 3 times, it's still towed in about maybe 3mm on each wheel, and I've got the steering wheel centred and aligned. So all that I need to do now is maybe just tow it out 2 turns on both sides, and that should get the tracking straight and the steering straight. There, that's bang on. Try the other side. There you go, that's spot on. Well, there you have it. Wheel alignment done for 99p. I don't know how much it is now to get that done, maybe 50 quid, but I've got it spot on. I've got the alignment absolutely straight, I've got the steering wheel straight, so that's great. And I've got both track control arms done now, so I just need to, it's taken me all afternoon. I knew that every nut and bolt would be difficult to get off because this suspension's been together for over 20 years and the corrosion just absolutely welds them on. So the next thing is to get the rest of the suspension off and the pesky strut top mount. Fingers crossed, you know, hopefully it'll come off easy enough, but all the rest of the bolts, I don't think they'll come off easy at all. So to be honest, I'm not really looking forward to that.